install bind. Okay.
If installed, uninstall Network Manager and Network Manager GNOME. Clean any dynamic IP entries out of, etc. hosts.
So before I do, again, I'm going to do sudo apt-get, and I'm going to do remove, and I'm going to say network dash manager, and I'm going to also do network dash manager dash genome. Some people say GNOME, some people say genome, gnip, who knows? And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go pull that out. Yes, a useful thing for a portable device, but not useful, and matter of fact, a problem for a server with a static IP address. So let's just get rid of it and dump that dead weight. All right, so we did, and we should be all set. And again, remember, take a gander at or a peek at your host file and make sure it's clean. And once you clean it up, if you uninstall Network Manager, you won't have those problems anymore. Now we're all ready to install the bind DNS service. And again, it's just going to be sudo apt-get and install. And it's bind 9. It's the DNS service. I'm going to go out online. I'm going to look for the DNS service. I'm going to say yes. And here we go. Okay, and it looks like everything went in, and bind has now been installed. And with bind installed, I'm going to go into the configuration folder, which is in etc bind. Again, I'll print the working directory, etc bind. And here are all of our configuration files. And we'll just need to edit a few of these, and we'll also have to create 2 files. One for a forward and one for a reverse lookup zone. The very first one I'm going to do is name.conf.options. So I'm going to do sudo nano named.conf.options. And what I want to do is set up forwarders. What are forwarders? Well, I'm going to set up a DNS server that's authoritative for my domain. However, what happens when I want to find a server or a machine or a domain outside of my domain, such as Google or Yahoo or Microsoft.com, somebody out there? For those situations, if my server can't return or resolve the host to IP address query, then it needs to have the address of forwarders it can send the request to. And then in that case, they will receive it, and if they don't know where it is, they may pass it on to the DNS servers of my ISP. And my ISP may pass it on to DNS servers at the top level of the internet, set up by IANA. But at some point, we want to be able to forward requests for host names that are not on our network. And so I'm going to do that. 109.207.13.1 is actually the address of my gateway, my router, and there's a dynamic DNS, cache-only DNS server built into that, so I can forward it to that and make it onto the internet. I could also use a couple of other addresses if I want. My internet service provider's IP address, 65.32.5.11. Notice that 111. Notice that we always terminate these with a semicolon, and I don't want to get carried away. Wouldn't want to necessarily add too many in here, but I could add more. There's 65.32.5.112, 112, another one of my ISPs. In addition, there's Google. Okay, maybe we are getting carried away here, but just for the purpose of illustration, so much evil has been done just for the purpose of illustration. But 888 or 8844. All right, so way more than I need, but just to kind of give you an idea, these are just IP addresses of DNS servers that if it's not in my domain, if it's off my network and on another network on the internet somewhere, I need to be able to pass my DNS queries off to those servers so that I can find those host names off of or outside of my domain. I'm going to save this, Control X and nano, Y for yes, and Enter to save it. And so that we're done with our first file. Just pulled the comment tags out, added some IP addresses for some, to forward some hostname queries. So not much to do there. Now the next file involves a little bit more work. So we're going to do sudo nano, and I'm going to do named.conf.local. These will be my settings. And by default, when you go into the bind folder and open this file, there's nothing in it. It's just comment tags, that's all. what we've got to do is create some zones, and I'm going to add a comment tag here for the purpose of trying to demystify, hopefully, or make this a little bit clearer. I'm just going to add some comments. Now, you don't have to add these comments. Remember, a comment tag just tells your Linux Ubuntu server to ignore the things you're putting in it. But I'm going to put the pound symbol there, and this is going to be for a forward lookup zone. And remember that a forward lookup zone holds A records, and it maps host names to IPs. We'll just call it what it is. Then down here later, I'm going to do a reverse lookup zone. Reverse lookup zone, and it's just the opposite. And it holds something called pointer records, or PTR records, and it maps, in this case, an IP address to a host name. Alright, so just added 2 comment tags. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up my forward lookup zone. And now this part is case sensitive and picky, so you want to do it exactly like I do it. Zone, and then I'm going to have an open and closing brace terminated with a semicolon, kind of like a block of code in Java or a class specification in C++. And then the zone name is going to be in between double quotes. So I just added the empty skeleton in here of what my zone data that I'm going to set up. But make sure yours looks like this. Now my domain name. I'm going to go with something really dork-tacular because that's just who I am and that's how I roll. So it's going to be Ultimate Battle. Make it look pretty there. UltimateBattlestars.com. Yeah. And then with that set up as that'll be my domain, the name of my domain, I need to specify just really 2 things here. Could specify more, but the type is going to be master. Master because remember that you can have primary and secondary zones, but you can only have one read-write zone. The rest are read-only. Well, this is the first bind DNS server we set up, so we have no choice. It has to be read-write. So I'm going to make that master. I'm going to specify the file, and the syntax for that is just, again, all lowercase, the keyword file. And it's going to go inside double quotes, and of course everything will end with a semicolon, at least in this file. So I want to give it the absolute path, etc, and bind, where all my DNS configuration files are, and I'm going to create a subdirectory called zones. Haven't done it yet, but I will, and that's where I'm going to put it. Alright, so I'm going to do ultimatebattlestars.com, and then don't have to, you could call it banana if you wanted to, but it's tradition to postfix it with DB for a database. Alright, so that has been set up as my forward lookup zone. Now later we'll have to go on and make the database, and it'll have to match this file name exactly. Next I want to do my reverse lookup zone, and this is where it might get a little interesting. If this is Superman up here, then this is Bizarro Superman. Just think of it as the inverse or the opposite of what you did up here. So forward, reverse. So in other words, if my server IP address is 199.207.13.100, I want to invert or flip these first 2 octets to come up with the zone name. And this is going to be the same on any system. So in this case, again, kind of like the syntax was up here. Let me kind of scroll up a little bit. See how I had lowercase zone, and I'm going to do the same syntax down here. So zone, my name will be in double quotes. I like to kind of do an empty skeleton and then go back and type stuff in between. But you can do it however you prefer. Just be careful to match the syntax that I'm showing you. So it's going to be 0, and that's this third portion here. This sort of acts like the network address, and that's 0. And no matter what you're doing, this would be 0 dot. We're going to invert or flip this, run it in reverse. So instead of 192.1.7, it's going to be 207.199. So 207.199. And then it's always going to be in-addr for internet address. And then it's going to be .arpa, and that's for address and routing parameter area. So just an explanation of the acronym if you were curious and wanted to know. I'm going to do type master, and in addition, I need to specify the file, so I'm going to use file, all lowercase. The name will go in double quotes. Remember, I have to end it with a semicolon. And my file name needs to match this, at least by tradition. You could call it banana if you wanted to, but we're going to match this and put it in our zones folder. So traditionally, we will put rev and dot and 0 and dot, and then the rest of my name there. So 207.199.in-addr for internet address dot ARPA for address and routing parameter area. Okay, and so there we have our configuration file set up, and now what's left to do is we need to go in and create these two files, our forward lookup zone database file and our reverse lookup zone database file. Into this file we will place our A records, and into this file we will place our pointer records, or PT